Good evening, all. Tonight I want to discuss a somewhat lesser known Universal horror movie from 1939 in the Frankenstein franchise, which is actually four movies, but was a very large influence, as I will discuss, on Gene Wilder's script for Young Frankenstein, and that is Son of Frankenstein from 1939, which stars, rather amazingly, four absolute luminaries of the horror genre of the time. Uh, that being Basil Rathbone, who of course played Sherlock Holmes for many years, Lionel Atwill, who you may know from The Vampire Bat and other great movies, um, Bela Lugosi, and of course as the monster Boris Karloff. Um, it takes place in, like I said, the story is very similar to at least some of the scenario of Young Frankenstein. The son of Henry Frankenstein, or Heinrich Frankenstein, in this case named Wolf Frankenstein, played by Basil Rathbone, and his wife, played by Josephine Hutchinson, and his son, played by Donnie Dunagan, come to the town of Frankenstein, the Banhoff Frankenstein, in, I guess, Bavaria, basically to reside in the family castle. He does not intend at the beginning to take up his father's work. He doesn't believe in it. He doesn't believe there actually was a monster. He thinks it's just, the villagers making up fairy tales, and that his father could not possibly have done what they claim that he did. He soon finds that the castle is somewhat haunted by this character named Ygor, and that's spelled Ygor, by the way, played by Bela Lugosi in a wonderful part, probably his best role since Dracula. Um, uh, as a man who was hanged for grave robbing, allegedly for Baron Frankenstein, so he could create the original monster. Um, he tries to kill Baron Frankenstein at one point, Wolf Frankenstein, I should say, by throwing a giant rock at him, but he misses, and he has his hunting rifle with him. He points it at him and says, "Come here!" He makes him tell him who he is, and he sees that he has a big scar on his neck. He says that they tried to hang him, and they declared him dead, but he wasn't dead. He was unsuccessful, and there's a big bone that sort of sticks out of his neck where they tried to hang him. Uh, he says, you're Frankenstein's son? He says, yes. You come with me. And he opens, of course, a secret passage. This castle is full of secret passages. I should say that the set design is absolutely fantastic in this movie. It looks like uh, a nightmare of German expressionism. Everything is at a strange angle. There's weird arches and bizarre, huge doors. The joke about the knockers on the door of Castle Frankenstein and Young Frankenstein comes from this movie, because there's a door with this enormous knocker, and everybody's making kind of comments about it. And at one point, Josephine Hutchinson says, "That thing scares me so much. Why don't you just have a doorbell put in?" I thought it was a funny line. But anyway, he follows him down into this vault. In the vault are the graves of his grandfather, ostensibly Victor Frankenstein from the novel, and his father, Heinrich Frankenstein. Someone has chalked on the top of his sarcophagus, "Maker of Monsters." And yeah, that upsets Wolf, and he talks to Igor. He says, "Is this what you brought me down here for?" And he says, "No," and he leads him further into the crypt, and there, lying on a slab, very much still alive, is the monster. But he is now immobile. He has slipped into a coma because he was struck by lightning during a very violent thunderstorm when he was walking around outside, and he can't move any longer. But he's still alive. His hand moves. He briefly opens his eyes, but he's in sort of a coma. And Igor kind of begs him to help him, to bring him back to life so he can move again. At first, he's very reluctant. He's inherited all of his father's notes, just as in Young Frankenstein. But, he's dismissive of them. He doesn't really think that the experiment happened, and he's not going to do anything about it. But Igor convinces him to restore the monster back to health. And he decides he's going to do it, and starts studying his father's notes, and realizes that he says something interesting here. And this is something that I don't even know, that it's not scientifically correct in certain ways. He says that Wolf Frankenstein rather says that his father Henry had tried to use electricity to create some sort of super violet ray, and I think he meant ultraviolet, but to bring the monster to life. He says what he discovered instead was cosmic rays, which nobody had yet studied. Cosmic rays were not very well known in 1939. They do, in fact, exist. They're passing through you as you watch this video. They do so every day. And he says that this was the key to life, the cosmic rays. Well, it's possible they might be. They might be responsible for our life in certain ways. Uh, but anyway, I found that an interesting line. The other characters who will be instantly identifiable is a character played by Lionel Atwill called Inspector Kruge. Inspector Kruge has a wooden right, right arm, because as a young boy, the Frankenstein monster visited his family and tore off his arm at the root. And now he has a wooden arm. He moves it in that same way that Kenneth Mars does in Young Frankenstein. Goes and makes those noises, and it goes at strange angles. And it's covered by a black glove, just as in the movie. He's very suspicious of Frankenstein and is constantly coming over and sort of annoying him. He relates that there have been 6 murders since the alleged destruction of Frankenstein's monster. And each of the victims had a very large bruise at the back of their neck, and their hearts had burst. But nobody saw the murders. Nobody knows who committed the murders. But Inspector Kruge is very suspicious. His Josephine, his wife, tells the inspector that Wolf has been spending a lot of time in his father's laboratory, and she doesn't know what he's doing. He's working on some sort of experiment. He's trying to bring the creature back to life, and he has the original equipment from the 1931 James Whale Frankenstein, the table and the Van de Graaff generators and the Tesla coils, and he has Ygor set them up and turn them on, and he's placed wires on the electrodes in the monster's neck to try and bring him back to life. And apparently fails. The monster opens his eyes briefly and makes kind of, growling sound, but then he shuts his eyes and goes back into the coma. And he tells Ygor, "I'm sorry, I did my best, but it seems that he'll never awaken." And leaves him there. Has his servant Benson disconnect Benson's been making notes of his experiments, disconnect much to Ygor didn't want anybody else to know about the monster still being alive. But Wolf told him, well, this man's been my servant for many years, and, you don't have to worry about him. He won't tell anybody. And Ygor says rather ominously, "No, he won't tell anybody," he says in that Bela Lugosi voice, and so Benson disconnects the electrodes, and then they walk out, and that's kind of, supposed to be it, but of course it's not. Suddenly it seems that there are another couple they bring the villagers, the burghers, as they call them, bring Ygor in and question him. And he says, "What do you want with Ygor? Ygor is dead. You declare me dead." He says, and he says, "You 8 of you hanged me." He says, "Now 6 of them are dead, but they dead. I dead alive." A great line. And he just delivers it in such a great style. And they give him these like weird sort of vampire-like teeth, which are really creepy. Another thing that's a resonance with the movie, with Young Frankenstein, he can control, the monster only obeys Ygor. He does not obey Wolf Frankenstein. He doesn't like being looking at himself in the mirror. He sees his image and he goes, "Rrr." He touches himself and he realizes what he's looking at himself. Then he looks at Frankenstein like, how come I'm not like you? Why am I not handsome? Implied, which I thought was interesting, and it makes the monster somewhat more sympathetic. His young son tells him a story that a giant came and visited him, and he gave him one of his picture books, and that he was a very nice giant, and he wasn't mean or anything. And he thinks he's just making it up. And his housekeeper thinks he's making it up too. He just has a wild imagination. One thing of note, Donnie Dungan talks in a really loud voice, and he says they did that on purpose because they kept telling him, "We can't hear you. You have to say your lines louder." Well, he had a very distinct Texas accent, and he didn't really want to shout or to shout his lines, but he ends up doing it because they kept saying, "We can't hear you. Talk louder. Talk louder." So he has this very so he's supposed to come from England, but he has this Texas accent, which Dungan said he thought was stupid, later on. But uh, yeah, he thought also that the shouting sort of ruined his role, but I don't think it really does. Um, he comes across as just kind of a exuberant child who obviously does have a good imagination and is just a general kind of a good person, but the story goes on. I said one of the other residences, Ygor can control the monster by using an Alpenhorn, which he carries around his neck, and he plays when he sends the monster out to do his bidding, which is to kill the remaining members of the burghers who hanged him, and he does so. And of course, since he's not at the scene of the crime, they can't. And he's also being observed by Inspector Kruge and his police agents. They can't place any blame directly on Ygor because he wasn't there. But using this Alpenhorn, he's controlling the monster to do his dirty work and to kill the last remaining two uh, burghers who hanged him, and he does so. And then the inspector comes over again, and now that the villagers are up, and the villagers didn't welcome Frankenstein at the beginning. They gave him a very cold welcome, just as in again Young Frankenstein, like, we don't really want you here. You Frankensteins are all evil and blah blah blah. Uh, but now they're outraged, and they're like gonna storm the castle, which again is a very creepy, strange, weird, tilted German expressionist looking structure. Like I said, the sets and the internal design is just fantastic. Really creepy, really strange. And they're going to storm the village. So the inspector comes over and says, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to arrest you. And this is from again resonance with Young Frankenstein. He's playing a game of darts, and he very angrily, throwing darts at the dart. He says, "What are you going to do? Arrest me?" He says, "Yes, I told the villagers I would arrest you. Just to calm them down." And then, he's just basically, keeping him under house arrest so that he won't go out, and he and his wife and his child won't be hurt by the villagers who are completely enraged at the discovery of these two other murders. They also find out that Benson has been murdered, but Benson was killed by Ygor because he thought he knew too much. And that he discovers him in another hidden passage. When the boy had told him that the monster came through the wall, he realizes that there's a hidden switch in the boy's room that opens a panel in the wall. Again, like the library thing in Young Frankenstein. There are several, three, I think, distinct secret passages that we see. One of them is in the library, one of them is in the boy's room, and one of them is in the Frankenstein's laboratory, which is apart from the castle itself. It's a separate sort of shell-like building that was the same one used in Frankenstein. And inside this pit, there is a sulfur pit, and the sulfur pit has been getting hotter and hotter over the years. Now they say it's up to about 800 degrees, and anything that drops into it will be instantly disintegrated. And that it smells, really, really bad, as sulfur does. That the Romans had used it as a Roman bath, apparently, when it was quite a bit cooler. But they even as in the movie, the inspector puts the darts in his wooden arm and is picking them up and throwing them from the arm, which again Kenneth Mars does in Young Frankenstein. So that's directly taken from that. Of course, all the humor in the movie is original. Marty Feldman and no, it's Ygor, that kind of stuff. What hump? That's all original. Walk this way, and he's doing the thing with the cane. But the background, the settings, were definitely lifted from this movie, and I mean lifted. I mean, they were basically pretty much direct copies. But again, because it was supposed to be a tribute to the Universal Frankenstein series, I don't think that's, can be counted as like plagiarism or, uh, anything of that sort. It's just a tribute, but again, a more direct tribute in some of the scenes and some of the things that go on. Wolf's wife is something of a clothes horse and, a kind of a dizzy blonde, just like the Madeline Kahn character in Young Frankenstein, as she plays Elizabeth, who was, again, from the book, not the movie. In the end, Ygor tries to kill Frankenstein with a hammer, and he shoots him and kills him. And the monster discovers him. This monster is his friend, or he's the monster's friend, even though he's been making the monster go out and kill people. The monster apparently doesn't have any moral compunction because his brain is not right. He's mentally defective. Despite having a body that's superior to most human beings, he's much stronger, his heart is bigger, etc. His blood is different, etc. Which is why he's still alive. Wasn't killed when the mill burned, or the laboratory burned down. Ygor says, your father created him to be alive forever. So you get the feeling that, he wasn't going to die. He didn't die at the end of Bride of Frankenstein either. But the monster discovers Ygor dead and is very upset because this was his only friend, and takes him. Ygor slept in a cave beneath the sulfur pit, which can be reached by a ladder. And he takes him down there and he lays him on his bed, realizes there's blood on his chest and that he's not gonna wake up again. He's very angry, and he starts throwing all the laboratory equipment over the edge into the sulfur pit, where it's destroyed, including his creation table, as it were, and the Van de Graaff generators and everything, and smashes Frankenstein's chemical table, and inadvertently blocks the door to the laboratory by doing that. And then he sees the book of fairy tales that the boy gave him, and he gets the idea that he's going to take revenge by killing Frankenstein's son. Goes up to his room, sees that he's there, and that his guardian is there too. Sneaks in through the wall that opens and knocks the guardian out unconscious. Doesn't kill her, just knocks her unconscious, and then takes the boy. The boy trusts him because he's never been mean to him, so he goes with him and takes him down to the sulfur pit. You see him lifting him, and he's like thinking about throwing him in, but he can't do it. He still has some moral sense. Puts him back on the ladder up into the laboratory, and he climbs up in there. The villagers, the inspector's men are trying to break in, and they can't get in because the table's blocking it. Wolf Frankenstein, climbs in through the hole in the ceiling, which he had repaired with a tarp, and confronts the monster. And he has this sort of a chain that he had used to open the panel that leads to the cave where Ygor lives. And he takes the chain and he swings himself on it and knocks the monster into the sulfur pit, and he's destroyed. The last scene we see is he and his wife and his son are at the train station, and he says, I hereby deed you the Castle Frankenstein and the lands surrounding it, and you can do with it what you will, and I hope you all have happy lives once more, that, now that it's all over. And this time the villagers are cheering him as he leaves. A very good movie. I thought it was really, really well done, well shot, terrific acting by particularly Basil Rathbone and Bela Lugosi, because again, Boris Karloff didn't get to say anything. He just played the monster. He makes the usual monster noises, and Ligosi later claimed that because he was so wooden, that gave him a chance to really act and really define the character of Ygor the way he wanted to, and he was very grateful for that. And this movie kind of pretty much paid for him for the rest of his life. He didn't do a whole heck of a lot of acting after this. As you probably know, the last movie that he did was Plan 9 from Outer Space for Ed Wood. By this time, he was a heroin addict and was broke and basically living on handouts, and he died before the movie was completed, again, rather sadly, of a heroin overdose. He had also been in Ed Wood's Bride of the Monster prior to that, and he gave a terrific speech in that, which I don't remember exactly the words to it, but he gave this great speech when they're somebody says, well, what are you going to do when you get home? He says, home, I have no home. Hated, despised, the jungle is my home. He says, but I will show this world that I can be its master. I'll show them, I'll create my own race, a race of atomic supermen to rule the world. And I thought that was so terrific. Just completely over the top. He just chewed the scenery like crazy. He also had this very strange role in Glenn or Glenda where he plays like I think a psychologist, and he just says, pull the string, pull the string. I don't know what that meant. I don't think anybody knows what it meant. But anyway, Son of Frankenstein, 1939, really, really well worth watching.